This is what Charles Manson said during an interview while serving life in prison for the brutal murder of Sharon Tate.
I wouldn't do anything that I felt guilty about. There's no need to feel guilty. I haven't done anything I'm ashamed of. Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better. Then when I felt like I really offered society something. You know, if I wanted to kill somebody, I'd take this book and beat you to death with it, and I wouldn't feel a thing. Do you feel blame? Are you mad? Do you feel like you guys got this stuck in your head that I've murdered somebody. What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I think it. I have it here. In my whole life, I've burglarized a grocery store, stole some nickels and dimes, busted open a stamp machine, stole a few automobiles, and cashed a couple checks. I'm a petty car thief. Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
Unlock the darkest stories and unravel the mysteries with Dark Crime Box. Subscribe now and step inside the world of true crime like never before.
Manson has been serving his time at this prison in Vacaville, California, isolated from his fellow inmates. Manson's first television interview since the murders begins badly.
No, I told you, I'm not going to sit in that damn chair, man. I'll stand here and talk with the dude.
Manson refuses to sit in the chair provided. He says he's not going to look up to anyone. But finally, Tom Snyder of the National Broadcasting Company asks his first question.
You know, you were sentenced to the gas chamber and then they modified the death penalty. Were you happy when that was done?
Was I happy when what was done?
When you found out that you weren't going to the gas chamber.
You're talking about dying. Now, it gets me nervous.
Why?
Did you have any thoughts about something? Was you wanting to go anywhere?
Were you happy when you found out you weren't going to go to the gas chamber, Charles?
I knew I wasn't going to go to the gas chamber because I hadn't done anything wrong.
You scared to die?
Sometimes I feel I'm scared to live. Living is what scares me. Dying is easy. How long have I been in jail? 34 years? 34 years, so...
Out of 47, you've been here 34.
I've been in jail, prison, a long time, all my life. I was raised up in here. So I understand jail. So I understand myself, and I can deal with that. I sit in my cell, and I do my number, like a convict does his number. But there's different colors on different people's backs doing different things. It's a different world. I love the world I live in, too, just like Regan loves the world he lives in.
You love the world you live in.
Most assuredly, it's me.
You love all the pain that you've caused people, all the anguish you've caused.
Oh, I don't know pain. I don't know pain. I have no depth of pain. I have no depth of suffering. I don't know ridicule. I don't know all the bad things. I haven't been punished by you all my life since I was 10 years old. I've been in every reform school you got across the country and used to lay down and have to get my ass whipped till I couldn't walk. Tell me about some pain.
And that's our fault. That's all those people
No
want.
fault. Make strong, good pain. Understand pain. Not bad. Pain's not bad. It's good. It teaches you things. It teaches you things. Like when you put your hand in fire, ow, you know not to do that again. Yeah. Yeah, I understand that.
Written accounts indicate that you told the authorities, don't let me out. I can't cope with the outside world. Do you have a recollection of that? And
you make a desperate plea out of something, man. There's no desperate plea out of it. I say I can't handle the maniacs outside. Let me back in.
I didn't use the word desperate. That's your word, Charles.
Yeah, well, your inflection and your voice tones were implications there.
Well, you use the word maniacs on the outside. How are you different from the maniacs on the outside? And why do you call them maniacs? Because you know something, they think you are one.
Yeah, it would reflect. If you hold the negative up to the light, you don't see the light, you just see the negative. So I'm a reflection of your negative, there's no doubt about that, and I can handle that also. I've been handling, ain't I?
I don't know, have you?
Well, I've been up and down these damn hallways, in and out of these nut wards for the last 10 years. You think you could follow that act? I'm playing for my life. You working for money.
When you say you're playing for your life, am I to assume that you think that someday you're going to get out of here?
Get out of here. Get out of here. Where would I go now? See.
What would you do if you got out of here?
If I got out of here.
What if they said to you tomorrow morning, Charles, hey, listen, you're free. You can go wherever you want to go. Do whatever you want to do. What would you do?
I'll probably go out front on the grass and sit down.
The cell door closes with a sound that doesn't echo. It seals. Steel meeting steel. Final. Absolute. In that moment, Charles Manson is no longer a symbol, no longer a cult leader, no longer a name whispered in fear across America. He is an inmate, a body assigned a number, a man entering a world where reputation can keep you alive or get you killed. Before we go any further, if you value deeply researched, cinematic true crime stories that expose what headlines leave out, support Dark Crime Box by liking this video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. Every interaction helps keep these stories alive. Manson arrives in prison already infamous. The murders tied to his influence have shocked the nation, carved fear into living rooms, and left families shattered beyond repair. The crimes are over, the courtroom spectacle has ended, and the cameras have turned away. What remains is punishment, not the kind written in sentencing documents, but the kind delivered daily behind locked doors. Prison does not greet new arrivals with explanations. There are no warnings, no orientation about survival. For someone like Manson, the first days are not about learning routines. They're about understanding danger. The air itself feels hostile. Conversations stop when he passes. Eyes follow him, not out of admiration, but calculation. Inside these walls, notoriety is a double-edged weapon. Some inmates want distance, fearing association. Others see opportunity, a chance to test themselves against a man whose name already carries weight. Prison has its own economy, its own hierarchy, and its own justice system. And Manson enters at the bottom, regardless of how loudly the world once listened to him. The crimes that put him here were not spontaneous acts of violence. They were the result of manipulation, control, and ideology twisted into obedience. Followers committed the acts, but responsibility led directly back to him. Investigators unraveled connections through testimonies, physical evidence, and psychological patterns that revealed something more disturbing than a single killer, a man who didn't need to wield the weapon himself. The families of the victims watched as the legal process unfolded, hoping for answers, for meaning, for something that could never truly be delivered. Communities struggled to comprehend how words alone could become instruments of murder. And when the verdict finally came, justice felt incomplete, because no sentence could undo what had been done. Prison, however, promised something different. Not closure, not healing, but consequence. From the first night, sleep is fragmented. Every sound carries intent. Footsteps could mean nothing, or everything. Inmates test boundaries subtly at first. A stare held too long. A shoulder brushed in passing. These are not accidents. They're questions, and every question demands an answer. The unwritten rules reveal themselves quickly. You do not boast. You do not explain yourself. You do not ask for protection. Weakness is a currency others spend without permission. And for someone as polarizing as Manson, neutrality is impossible. Guards watch him differently, not with fear, but with caution. He is unpredictable, verbally volatile, and psychologically manipulative. Control becomes the priority. Interactions are minimal. Distance is intentional. Prison staff are trained to manage bodies, not minds, and Manson's mind refuses to be contained quietly. Halfway through this story, if you're finding value in the depth and atmosphere of this narration, take a moment to like and share this video. It tells the algorithm that stories like this deserve to be seen. Threats don't always come in words. Sometimes they come in silence. Notes left where they shouldn't be. Food trays moved. Space invaded deliberately. For many inmates, harming a notorious figure is a way to earn status. For others, protecting him is equally dangerous. One incident changes everything. Not loud, not dramatic, brutal in its restraint. Whether it's a physical confrontation, a calculated act of isolation, or a forced move into protective custody, the message is clear. Prison will not bend to his mythology. From that moment on, survival becomes routine. Isolation replaces influence. Control narrows to the size of cell. Communication is monitored. Movement is restricted. The man who once commanded loyalty now measures time in footsteps and light patterns on concrete walls. This is not redemption. It is endurance. And as the years stretch forward, the question becomes unavoidable. Is this punishment enough, or is it merely another chapter in a story built on control and consequence? Stay with Dark Crime Box. In the next chapter, we go deeper into the unspoken rules, the constant threats, and the moment prison made it clear that Charles Manson would never truly belong anywhere again. Prison does not announce its rules. They're learned the hard way, through observation, punishment, and fear. For Charles Manson, understanding these rules is not optional. It is survival. By the time the first weeks pass, the shock of arrival has faded, replaced by something colder. Awareness. Every movement inside prison carries meaning. Where you sit, who you look at, how long you speak. Silence is often safer than words, and reputation can turn lethal overnight. Inside these walls, crimes matter, but which crimes matter most is decided by inmates, not courts. There is a hierarchy of sin. Some offenses can be overlooked. Others are never forgiven. And crimes involving manipulation, cult control, and violence against the innocent place a permanent mark on a man's back. Manson's name travels faster than he does. In prison, stories are currency, and his story has already been exaggerated, twisted, mythologized. Some inmates believe he is dangerous in ways they can't see. Others believe he is nothing more than a weak man who hid behind followers. Both views are dangerous. The unwritten rules tighten around him. You do not seek attention, attention finds you. You do not preach. Ideology is a liability. You do not try to control. Control belongs to the yard, not the cell. But Manson struggles with restraint. Control was once his identity. Influence was his weapon. And prison strips both away piece by piece. Attempts to speak, to posture, to provoke reactions are met with swift consequences, sometimes official, sometimes not. Guards notice early on that he requires a different approach. He is not physically imposing, but he is volatile, unpredictable, and verbally manipulative. Conversations are brief. Orders are firm. Any hint of performance is shut down immediately. The goal is not rehabilitation. It is containment. There is no special treatment, only increased scrutiny. Some guards view him as a security risk. Others see him as a nuisance. None see him as important. That indifference cuts deeper than hostility. In a place where power is everything, being ignored is a form of erasure. Halfway through this chapter, if you're still watching, support Dark Crime Box by liking this video. It helps bring stories like this to the surface, the ones that don't make headlines. Threats begin to surface more clearly now. Not shouted, not written down. They come in coded looks, whispered warnings pass through others. Some inmates want to hurt him to make a name for themselves. Others want him removed from their environment entirely. Violence in prison is rarely impulsive. It is planned, weighed, and executed when opportunity allows. And for someone as notorious as Manson, opportunity is always being calculated. At one point, pressure escalates to a level the administration cannot ignore. Whether it is an attempted assault, a credible threat, or mounting intelligence reports, the result is the same: separation. Isolation becomes protection, and protection becomes another form of punishment. Solitary confinement is not silence. It is noise without sound. Time stretches unnaturally. Days blur together. Human interaction becomes rare, measured, controlled. For someone whose power once came from constant reinforcement and attention, isolation is psychological erosion. The prison has made its decision. Survival will be allowed, influence will not. Manson adapts, but adaptation is not victory. It is compromise. He learns when to speak and when silence is safer. He learns that guards are not enemies, but they are never allies. He learns that inside these walls, myth means nothing without force. And he has none. Years pass, and the threats never fully disappear. They simply change form. Prison does not forget. New inmates arrive, carrying old stories. His name resurfaces again and again, like a shadow that cannot be outrun. Yet something else happens quietly. The world outside moves on. Headlines fade. New monsters replace old ones. And inside his cell, the reality becomes unavoidable. Notoriety does not age well in prison. It becomes a liability without reward. In the end, survival depends on becoming smaller, less visible, less reactive, less remembered. This is not the life he imagined. This is not the legacy he believed in. It is a slow narrowing of existence, defined by routines and restrictions, stripped of meaning. And still, the question lingers, is this justice or simply another cage built to hold something society no longer wants to see? In the next chapter, we'll examine the most brutal moment. The incident that permanently changed how prison treated Charles Manson, and why survival came at a psychological cost he could never escape. By the time Charles Manson settles into the long rhythm of incarceration, prison has already decided what he is allowed to be and what he is not. He is not a leader, not a prophet, not a force. Inside these walls, he is a problem to be managed. The guards understand this better than anyone. Correctional officers are trained to maintain order, not to engage with mythology. And Manson arrives wrapped in it. His name alone carries volatility. Every interaction is calculated. Distance is intentional. Conversations are stripped of emotion, delivered flat, procedural, controlled. There is no curiosity, no debate, no space for performance. He is watched more closely than most, not because he is physically dangerous, but because unpredictability is its own form of risk. His movements are logged, his behavior documented. Any attempt to provoke, manipulate, or dominate a situation is cut short immediately. Guards rotate frequently. Familiarity is discouraged. Consistency, in this case, would be a vulnerability. Unlike inmates who rely on intimidation or strength, Manson's threat has always been psychological. Prison removes that advantage. Staff are instructed not to engage, not to react, not to give him what he wants most, attention. Orders are given without explanation. Compliance is expected without negotiation. To him, this feels like punishment layered on punishment. Other inmates notice the way guards treat him, the extra caution, the controlled distance. In prison culture, that signals weakness as often as it signals danger. Either way, it invites pressure. Threats from inmates become more pronounced as time goes on. Not dramatic, not explosive, but constant. A presence felt during recreation. Attention in shared spaces. Prison violence rarely comes with warning, and everyone knows it. For some inmates, attacking a notorious figure is a shortcut to reputation. For others, simply existing near him feels like risk they never asked for. His crimes, carried out through manipulation and influence, earn him no respect here. If anything, they inspire contempt. At least one incident forces intervention. Details are fragmented, intentionally obscured by the system that handles such moments quietly. But the outcome is undeniable. Increased isolation, restricted movement, protective measures that feel less like safety and more like containment. This is the brutal moment prison never advertises. Not a riot, not a headline, a controlled, silent escalation that ends with Manson separated from the general population. Protection, yes, but also erasure. He is removed not because he matters, but because the institution refuses to let chaos form around him. Halfway through, if this story is holding you, take a moment to like the video. It helps Dark Crime Box continue telling the stories that live in the shadows. Isolation changes him. Without an audience, there is nothing to perform for. Without followers, there is no control to exert. Days become identical. Meals slide through slots. Conversations are rare and monitored. Even hostility becomes distant, abstract. Time stretches unnaturally in confinement. Minutes feel like hours. Hours dissolve into days. For someone whose identity depended on constant reinforcement, this is psychological attrition. The prison doesn't argue with him. It doesn't challenge his beliefs. It simply removes the environment where they could survive. And slowly, inevitably, his presence fades. Inmates cycle in and out. New names replace old legends. His notoriety becomes outdated, referenced only by those who remember. To many, he becomes just another isolated figure behind a secured door. But survival comes at a cost. Isolation protects the body, not the mind. The lack of stimulation, the absence of control, the monotony, all of it compounds. The man who once thrived on chaos now exists inside it, contained and endless. Prison has stripped him down to routine. And as the years continue to pass, the question shifts again. Not whether Charles Manson can survive prison, but what survival actually means when everything that defined you has been taken away. In the next chapter, we'll look at how he survives now. The rituals, the coping mechanisms, and the long-term psychological toll of a life reduced to containment. Before you move on, subscribe to Dark Crime Box, like the video, and turn on notifications. Because some punishments don't leave scars you can see. They leave silence. As the years grind forward, Charles Manson's survival inside prison becomes less about danger and more about endurance. The constant threats fade not because he is forgiven, but because he is removed. Isolation, protective custody, and strict supervision shrink his world to a controlled routine where unpredictability is eliminated at the cost of humanity. Guards no longer view him as a crisis, only a responsibility. Interaction is minimal, procedural, and emotionally vacant. He is managed, not engaged. The institution's goal is simple: prevent disruption, prevent influence, prevent legacy. Any behavior that hints at manipulation is immediately shut down. Prison does not argue with ideology. It suffocates it through monotony. Among inmates, his name slowly loses power. New prisoners arrive with new fears and new stories. Time erodes notoriety. Without access to the general population, Manson becomes a figure spoken about rather than encountered. His crimes remain unforgivable, but distance replaces hostility. Prison doesn't forget, it isolates. To survive, he adapts to a life stripped of control. Routine replaces charisma. Silence replaces influence. The days are structured around meals, checks, and confinement. There is no audience to impress, no chaos to command. Survival depends on compliance and invisibility. Psychologically, the cost is relentless. Long-term isolation erodes identity, warps perception, and dulls emotion. The mind turns inward, feeding on memory and repetition. This becomes the real punishment, not violence, but erosion, a slow dismantling of the self. Outside the walls, the world moves on. New crimes, new monsters, new headlines. Inside, time stands still. Justice here is not dramatic. It is quiet, unending, and indifferent. In the end, prison does not redeem Charles Manson, nor does it offer closure. It reduces him to existence without meaning, influence without followers, and survival without purpose. And the haunting question remains, is this the ultimate form of justice, or simply society's way of locking away what it refuses to understand? If this story made you think, support Dark Crime Box by liking, sharing, subscribing, and turning on notifications, because the darkest punishments are often the ones no one sees.